Our lesson of Scripture this morning comes to us from the Gospel of John. This morning I'll be reading from chapter 10, verses 1 through 15. Hear now the reading of God's holy word. Very truly I tell you, anyone who does not enter the sheepfold by the gate, but climbs in by another way, is a thief and a bandit. The one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep hear his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes ahead of them, and the sheep follow him because they know his voice. They will not follow a stranger, but they will run from him because they do not know the voice of strangers. Jesus used this figure of speech for them, but they did not understand what he was saying to them. So again, Jesus said to them, Very truly I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and bandits, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters by me will be saved, and will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand, who is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and runs away, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them. The hired hand runs away because a hired hand does not care for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me, just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. This is the word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God. This morning's scripture is about shepherds and sheep, about Jesus and us. When we think of the area around the Sea of Galilee, we think of this kind of pristine rural area. When Jesus was on the earth, that area around the Sea of Galilee had as many as a couple 100,000 people who lived in it, in a number of small towns and cities. If we look at this as being the Sea of Galilee, in Jesus' time, there were 15 towns around the shore. Now, if you move back from the shore, 1.5 miles, 2 miles, there was another set of roads. And on these roads, a little bit further out, was a group of cities called the Decapolis, called the 10 cities. And they had been built by the Romans. The little towns right on the shore, Jewish towns populated with Jews. You go back about 1.5 miles, 2 miles from the shore, and a series of roads from all over Africa, Asia, the Middle East met and circled that whole area. And Rome built a bunch of designed towns to service all of the international traffic that came through there. And all you had to do was look at one of those little towns of the Decapolis, and you would understand it wasn't a Jewish town. It was a statement of Roman power and domination. They all looked pretty much alike. Let's say, take the main street in Cherokee. Imagine a business district, 3 or 4 blocks long. Take the street, pave it with pavers, stone pavers, get rid of the parking spaces and put hitches for horses and donkeys and such. And then you have 2 buildings, one on each side of the road. They are constructed continuously. They have thatch and mud roofs over the top of them, and they are shops and stores of different sizes. Absolutely amazing to stand and look at one of the ruins of one of those places and realize how modern the ancients could be. They had neighborhoods that were out around the edge of them, and so the people who provided the services for all the travelers and ran the businesses and shops, they lived there, and those had pretty much fallen into ruin and been destroyed. But amazingly, the central business district for these 10 cities of the Decapolis, they were recognizable and really interesting to look at. Now, I stood there taking it all in when I went to the Holy Land and wondering what it was like. Because the scriptures tell us that Jesus visited the 10 cities. That's what the scriptures refer to them as. So he didn't work the area just right around the shores. He worked the areas where a lot of the international travelers were. Stood there, kind of taking it all in, trying to put myself back, and wondering if Jesus himself had perhaps been in this little town that I was overlooking the ruins. And I heard a bell. A bell that could have been 2,000 years old. The kind of bell that you hang around the neck of a sheep or a cow. Jangling, coming from somewhere. And I looked up, and over the top of a hill into the ruins of one of the neighborhoods came a shepherd with a flock of 30 or 40 sheep. And he stood there on the top of the hill and leaned on his crook and looked down the hill at us as we stood there and looked up at him. And I thought that across 2,000 years, that was a scene that Jesus could have seen on any day. He had wandered into one of these little towns. And the shepherd was a real article. You could have put him in your Christmas pageant without having to go to the box and find a costume for him, because he got up that morning and put on the costume, which was his everyday outfit as a shepherd. Shepherds and sheep are one of the enduring images of the Bible. Who was the first shepherd? Well, Abel, Adam and Eve's son. Abraham had flocks. David, before he was king, was a young shepherd who kept sheep. They were all over the place. I got the feeling that there was a good possibility that Jesus could have stood in that very little town, and as he spoke to people, a shepherd and a flock appeared on the hill just at the edge of town. Jesus had a way of looking around him and drawing his illustrations from whatever was going on. You hear the bell, you see the sheep, and so it's the most natural thing in the world for him standing there in the business district at the foot of the hill talking to a couple hundred people to point up the hill and said, "See that?" Said, "I am the good shepherd." And he drew the analogy between good shepherds and bad shepherds and the care of God and the personal aspect of the shepherd's relationship with the sheep as it related to the personal relationship that God his Father had with all of his children. I'm the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me. Jesus said that. He was talking about a relationship. In a lot of societies, sheep are raised for food. Say 1 year and done. 1 year when I was in seminary, went down to Chapel Hill to watch Duke and Carolina play football. Duke was having a bad year. Carolina was having a bad year. There were plenty of tickets available, and so some of us put a car together. And it was the game. There was so little interest in the actual football game that the schools got into a thing over mascots. And Carolina people came up and physically kidnapped the Blue Devil. Oh yes, carried him off. And all the Duke people were very piously talking about calling in the FBI, you know, because kidnapping can be a federal crime. Well, the Duke students went and got Ramses, and they carted Ramses off and held him hostage, and Carolina students would not give the Blue Devil back, and so the Duke students kept Ramses. And as of game time, right before game time, Ramses had not been seen. The Duke cheerleaders showed up with 2 wheelbarrows full of lamb chops. And they went on the PA system and announced that they had turned Ramses into ram chops. And they took those 2 wheelbarrows full of ram chops and right up to the student section, the Carolina student section, and started throwing that raw meat up into the stands. I thought that we were going to have trouble and people were going to die. Well, they got it all worked out, and Ramses got trotted out between the goalposts, and the Carolina folks were happy. And the Blue Devil, who looked a little worse for wear and tear, he was trotted out, and we played the game. And I don't know how the game ended. Actually, both teams were so bad that year that both of them tried to lose it, and one of them succeeded in actually losing the game. But in a lot of cultures, that's what you raise sheep for, the food. It's not in biblical culture. You raised them for wool, and that makes a big difference in how you relate to the sheep. If you're not putting them through a meat grinder every year, but you're shearing them and then putting them back in the flock, they have an ongoing relationship with the shepherd. Used to be people counted sheep to go to sleep by. That's what the old folks talk about, you know. You lie there in the bed and you count them going over the fence. I don't know that anybody counts sheep anymore. I think most people, when they're suffering from insomnia, they do their counting as a channel surf. You know, looking for at least one channel that has a program that will help them go to sleep by. A shepherd, when a shepherd counted sheep, a shepherd counted sheep, not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, counted them by name. Pull them into the fold for the night. You know, in Cherokee, everybody has a nickname. Well, if you're a shepherd, you've got a nickname for every one of your sheep. And it's just, you look at them and you see physical characteristic. White sheep with a big old black tuft up here. It's got to be like the dog, you know, you name Spot because that's what he has. Broken ear, bobtail. You can just, if you're the shepherd, you have a name for every one of the sheep, and you call that name out, and the sheep connects with your voice. So Jesus said, the sheep knows the voice of the shepherd. What's Jesus saying to us? We're not numbers. We're names. God, you wonder if God has a nickname for us, but He knows who we are. Calls us by name, and when God thinks about us, God thinks about us not as one among many, but He thinks about us as His children, His sons and daughters. If we are sheep in the fold, what's the most important thing for us? Is to be able to recognize the voice of the shepherd. Why? Because there are other voices out there. The good shepherd isn't the only shepherd. There are people who will steal the sheep and who will call them. And if the sheep answer the wrong call, they might wind up being lost. There are a lot of voices out there in life. It seems like the further we go in life, the more voices there are kind of beckoning to us with offering us this and offering us that. Selling a lot of lifestyles. We know the voice of our shepherd. Problem is, we don't always heed the voice of our shepherd. Let me say that again. We know the voice of our shepherd. We're here. We're here for a reason. Because we claim the shepherd claims us. We know the voice. Knowing the voice and heeding the voice. Now, there can be a difference there. I've heard it said, and Hoppy, I don't know, you can correct me after church. One of the things I have heard said about sheep is that they are stubborn, and that in the animal kingdom they are on the dumb side. Is that?
Not so dumb. We'll find the hole we get out.
Okay, well, I'm going to use dumb, a little bit dumb for my purposes this morning. They're stubborn. Well, we're stubborn. We can do stubborn as good as any species in God's creation. We can. That's a gift we have, if we want to call it a gift. But dumb, we're not dumb. Sheep may be a little bit that way, but we're not. Our problem sometimes is we're too smart for our own good. And that's because we're always figuring the angles. We look at everything that's out there in life and think about, we do this, we do that, and what course of action is going to be to our advantage, and what course of action that we choose among all of our options is going to bring us the most satisfaction. Adam and Eve were doing great as long as there was only one voice in the Garden of Eden, and as long as there was only one shepherd who was a good shepherd. Somehow or other, the snake shows up, and the snake presents itself as a good shepherd, willing to be their friend and confidant, willing to help them enhance their life. And the snake pulls Eve aside and says, you know, you and Adam are really lucky. You're really blessed. You own the best piece of real estate there is. Doesn't get any better than where you live right now. But you know, there's more than this. And you can have that more if you want to. I know God has told you some things, but if you listen to me, you can have even more than you have now, and He'll never know a thing. Think about that. And so Eve goes and speaks to Adam and said, Adam, said, I have met the nicest snake. Come over here and let the snake explain to you what he's talking about. And so Adam goes over and they listen and they say, well, if the old man never finds out, this could be a good thing. Well, we all know how that story ended. They went for it. The snake offered them double or nothing. They'd never heard of double or nothing. But when after the snake explained to them what double or nothing was, they decided that in this case the risk might be worth it. That would be the first record in the Bible of gambling. A lot of voices. And a lot of people out there in life that present themselves to us as good shepherds, having our interest at heart, giving us advice that if we'll follow it, will make our lives better. There are lots of choices, opportunities galore. In all of that, the truth is still what it always was, and that is that there is only one voice that we can count on. All the rest are a gamble. So the question is, when something is pushed at us, are we feeling lucky? Sometimes lucky makes us brave. Sometimes lucky causes us, feeling lucky causes us to do things that are pretty foolish. For a person of faith, the question is really, why do we need to feel lucky if we're already blessed? Among all the things we do, those of us who are Christians, who call ourselves lambs of His flock, sheep of His pasture, there's nothing in life that is more important than being able to pick out Jesus' voice among all the other voices that are out there speaking to us. And having picked out Jesus' voice, to heed it. To hear it and to heed it. Because His voice is the voice that leads us through life in the best possible way, and not only leads us through life, but leads us through life on the way home, which is another place, even better than this one we live in. Where do the other voices lead us? Well, a lot of the places they lead us turn out to be dead ends. And as is generally true, most of the places that those other voices point us to are not home in any good sense of the word. So my question as we head out the door this morning is not, are you feeling lucky as you look at life, but are you feeling blessed? And if you're feeling blessed, what that means is that you are listening for the voice of the shepherd, who is a good shepherd, who knows your name, who cares about you, and knowing that inclines you to pay attention to what the shepherd is telling you. Feeling lucky? That's walking out into a week where you may be willing to roll the dice. Feeling blessed? That's listening for the voice you trust and following the leadings that you get from that. Think about that. We are here for 1 hour a week. You are everywhere else for 7 days and 23 hours. A lot of time. A lot can happen. The Good Shepherd cares about us. And the Good Shepherd is willing to speak to us in that 6 days and 23 hours that remain between now and the next time we gather. Think about that as we sing a song that reminds us who the Good Shepherd is and how he cares about us.